Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live interview today, and thank you for joining us. It's great to see leaders tuning in from across regions, sectors, and disciplines. My name is Buba Shakti. I'm the Chief Ethics and Culture Officer at Women in AI, and I'm really glad to be joined by Elena Sinel, the founder and CEO of Teams in AI. Women in AI is a global nonprofit working to advance inclusive leadership, responsible innovation, and ethical governance in artificial intelligence. We are a team of volunteers spread across 170 plus countries, and I cannot do what I do without my team's support every single day. In my role as the Chief Ethics and Culture Officer at Women in AI, I focus on the intersection of ethics, culture, and leadership accountability globally across every country we operate. Much of my work centers on helping corporations and C suite leaders navigate AI transformation, even when AI is not their core business, and supporting startups in embedding governance, risk, and compliance early so AI readiness is built in from the start. I see firsthand how ethical AI decisions are shaped as much by culture and judgment as by technology. I'm delighted to be joined today by Elena Sinel, an award winning social entrepreneur and AI ethicist. She is recognized for her leadership in advancing practical education frameworks that equip young people to address global challenges. With over a decade's experience in international development, she has worked with the British Council, United Nations Development Programme, and the World Bank. I titled our conversation today as Shaping the AI Driven Economy, Youth, Ethics, and Culture. As AI continues to transform industries and institutions, another question is becoming increasingly important: who will shape the next phase of AI driven economy? Education systems are still adapting, access to AI literacy remains uneven, and the participation of girls and diverse communities in AI development is still far below where it needs to be. Today's discussion is about understanding how we prepare the next generation, not only with technical skills, but with the ethical awareness and cultural perspective needed to build AI responsibly. Let's get started. Hi, Elena. Welcome.
Hey, hi, Buva. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thanks for joining us. To start with, what inspired you to launch Teens in AI, and why do you believe AI literacy must begin early?
So, what inspired me actually, a conversation I've had with my daughter, who told me that a teacher at school said that computer science was actually boring and it's not for girls. That when she was picking her GCSE subjects, she should just focus maybe on sociology, psychology, dance, because computer science is too boring. And I think when I heard that coming from my daughter and the conversation I think that her teacher had with her was far less inspiring than I would have hoped as a parent. And I just felt probably a little bit of rage and a bit of maybe responsibility for my own daughter, because I could see the trends already. I'm talking about the conversation happening 12 years ago. But even back then, living in London, you couldn't really not notice the amount of tech events around you. The startup scene is always buzzing. Product Hunt is running its first hackathon. Techstars are there, Viral, lots of AI incubators, tech incubators, startup incubators, and whatnot. So it's always been something that London attracted a lot of incredible talent, and the world was buzzing at that time with all things tech. So I thought, oh, well, computer science obviously is a natural thing that my daughter should pick in her GCSEs and A levels. But it wasn't what she was told at school. And I was a bit surprised. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to take you somewhere cool and somewhere fun. There was a hackathon happening in London back in 2014. My daughter was only 12, 13. And I said, let's just go and figure it out and find out what a hackathon is. I had no idea what a hackathon was at that time. we came as participants. We pitched some cool ideas that came mostly from my daughter, because I always encourage her, okay, what shall we build? What problems do we want to solve? So I saw her for the first time pitch project. I saw her work in the team. So we were in competing teams. So Mom's team is here, her team was there, and we were both solving different problems in different teams. My team won, hers was runners up. So I said, next time, maybe your team will win as well. But it was a massive event, and I was super happy to see my daughter interact in an environment she hasn't really seen. Well, nor have I. This was the first time that she was pitching her ideas to some judges, trying to win prizes. She got very competitive. She was the youngest one. She got out on the street with her questions in her notebook, asking people certain questions, doing a proper user interview. And I thought, wow, she's learning how to ask questions. She's learning how to work in a team she's never met before. She's doing a little bit of coding. She's helping with the logo. And then she's pitching her project. I thought, wow, that's a real missing piece in education. So that's what inspired my daughter. I think what inspired her even more is when I told her, well, I think a couple of years later, she was already winning too many hackathons. She learned the game, and then she was taking up clothes in House of Fraser, and she was, Mommy, I'm just getting paid £7 an hour, and it's just so little. I try to save, and I keep saving, and it's like, I can't buy anything. And I said, well, guess what? If you were a data scientist, and I'm talking like maybe some 7-8 years ago, you would be earning £40 to £50 an hour. She said, really? Really? And I think this is really why she decided, okay, maybe I should look into computer science seriously, data science, computer science, AI. We already started running programs at that time. And that's really how it happened. It was the initial inspiration, and then it was the economics that really won her heart over. Yes, and I do remember these early conversations when she was applying for apprenticeships, and she had an interview with Google and an interview with IBM, because she somehow managed to convince them that she was really good to hire. And on that day, I remember she was telling Google no, because she said, you've just fired my favorite AI ethicist, Timnit Gebru. I was so proud of her, because she was kind of already so aware of what was happening within the ethics, some of the ugly things, and firing people because they were saying things that they didn't believe in anymore. It was probably not something that inspired my daughter with Google. So she went with IBM, and she still is there. So that is the long-winded story behind how it all started and how it's going.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I share that sentiment as well, because I have a daughter myself, and who is also equally into AI, machine learning, data science. And I think it's the time where we want to encourage youth. But when we talk about ethics and culture, we don't have to, keep the economy and the profitability away. How can we build a society that's profitable, thriving, and still within the ethical and cultural guardrails, right? So I can't agree more. I share the sentiment with you as well. Now, many people think of AI as purely technical, right? So I certainly do not agree with that. And I want to know your thoughts. Why do you also emphasize ethics, culture, societal impact when teaching young people about AI?
Well, my first interaction with AI as a concept, I think, happened back in 2017, and it was a teenager in our community who asked me, "Well, Elena, we've already done a hackathon with augmented reality. We've done VR, we've done tech for good, and just in general, building apps and other things. What about AI?" And I asked him, "What about AI? How can we run a hackathon in AI? You tell me." And so I could see he was already so passionate. He was only 15, and he already knew so much about this system. He said, "Well, why don't I help you organize the first hackathon in AI?" And that happened back in 2018. I remember, and he was very, very engaged. He ran a workshop. He taught everyone Python. He did a workshop on what's AI, what's not AI, and he was only 15 at that time. And I thought, wow, this is, super incredible for me as an adult to learn and engage. And because I was just learning, and I would never run anything or teach anything kids that I already don't know enough about, I suppose. So I need to first explore and understand. And I kind of started doing a little bit of research to understand what is it that we're dealing with. Is it just like Python? What is it? Like JavaScript? And I realized that after reading a lot of material online already and coming across some work by Joy Bulambini, read up a little bit on Timnit Gebru's work, and I thought to myself, well, that doesn't seem like a technology. This is a lot more than just a language. This is a lot more than just some sort of a tool that we're engaging with. And it made me realize, particularly when I started reading about some of the gender biases, some of the ethnic biases, but also some of the power structures within AI, I realized there is a lot more to AI that meets the eye. And it felt like more young people needed to learn about what that system does. And I call it system deliberately because even when we talk to teachers and educators, we always say this is not just a technology. It is definitely not your ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot that we're used to. There is a lot more to AI, and there needs to be a much bigger awareness and understanding of what this technology does, how you interact with the system, but what it can also cause, some of the harms or inequalities it can perpetuate. We've seen some really awful circumstances or things that have happened that we're absolutely not proud of, like the earlier chatbots like Tay. Within my teachings, I still refer to it as a fascist, chatbot, right? Because of all of the, fascist remarks and Nazi remarks that it started spitting out. We still talk about some of the early historical case studies of Google getting the captioning wrong. You will know this case study really well, when people would be putting in gorilla, and there would be, black people would be shown on the screen, which is quite awful, really. An example of a racist algorithm. We've seen certain soap dispensers developed where a person of color would be washing hands and the soap just wouldn't, they would get any soap because it was trained on the skin of white people, right?
Yeah.
We've seen surveillance systems developed, or just image recognition systems developed, which is, of course, doesn't recognize dark skin. The very famous, case study of Joy Bulambini and what inspired her to do the work that she's still doing. So I think this is just not something to be proud of. It's something kids need to know, that things have happened in the past and still happening. Really, now we're talking about neocolonialism. Now we're talking about extraction. How big tech companies extracting still from Africa and from other areas which have underprivileged communities or underserved communities, paying them very little to clean that data, and watching some of the traumatic data sets. And yet some other people using the system to create deepfakes, pornography. It's just incredible just how this has managed to penetrate so many different areas of our life. That is definitely a subject that parents need to be aware how their kids are interacting online, what kind of data they are inputting, and what's really happening when they interact with the systems online, and how this is affecting the future ads. And I already made a prediction. I said the next big thing within OpenAI will probably be them trying to monetize this through ads, like Meta does.
Yeah.
And every time you would put into search, or you would prompt something as simple as, I don't know, I'm looking to buy a dress on ASOS. Can you price it up, compare and whatnot? And you will have ads popping at you because the system already knows and learns what you actually are looking for and searching for. I mean, it happens already with Google and various other systems that will come to the chatbots and whatnot. So I feel like all of this needs to be somehow brought into or highlighted to young people, to parents, to teachers, so that somehow they intertwine these discussions into some of the subjects that they're teaching, so that kids are a little bit more aware of some of the risks, the dangers, but also if kids are already passionate, interested in this technology, they know how they could get started on building something that actually matters to them. And what I like about working with kids is they don't build things for enterprise. They would build
Yeah.
things that matter to them. And they're very frank and open about it. You know, they pick up on biases and things that they disagree with. And it's almost like black and white working with kids. They will either love it or hate it, right? And when they build something, they actually do care about climate. They care about, mental health. They care about other issues that they're experiencing or their families are experiencing. So they're highly unlikely to build something that's profitable, something that enterprise will use, although some of them do think along those lines, but they're more likely to build something that matters to the real world and matters to them, which is kind of inspiring. And that's, I think, why I still do my work. I really look for this kind of inspiration in the crazy world that we're living in, where, randomly bombs are thrown at certain countries and weird things happen. So where I get my inspiration is just working with amazing young people.
Yeah, kids are very receptive when we are able to tell them the benefit, especially from their perspective, but also for people around them. They are very socially conscious. Given the resources, I'm sure they can teach us more than what we teach them. And that's what I call it as intergenerational mentorship. There is always something to learn from each other. Now,
Absolutely.
teams in yeah, definitely, and teams in AI now operates in 100 plus countries. So, what differences have you observed across regions in how young people approach AI? Probably take like 3 or 4 regions as an
Mm.
example. Give me some examples of things you saw similar, different in some of those regions on how young people approach AI.
It very much varies, actually. The
Hmm.
same problem, say, I don't know, education, let's say. It's a painful topic for kids, so we tackle it every year, and it's always exciting to see how kids see education should be and how it's very different in real life. So, of course, somewhere like England, if the same challenge is tackled in a school in England, it will be different problems that they would want to tackle, whereas somewhere else, say Kenya or Tanzania, parts of India, Pakistan, they approach problems through a different lens. So for instance, I remember last year the winning project in one of our biggest campaigns called International Women's Day Hackathon was actually 2 girls from Pakistan. The problem initially that they picked was to do with period poverty. And it is something that they both felt really passionate about. There isn't much awareness around education and period poverty or periods in general. Maybe it is still the topic that is a taboo topic and stigma attached and whatnot. So the 2 girls decided we are just going to build something to raise more awareness and educational content for girls around periods. Interestingly enough, midway through they pivoted. What happened is they started talking to moms and moms' friends for some interesting odd reason. They picked that demographic, and somehow moms managed to convince the girls, well, there's quite a bit more information about period now than when we were growing up. But actually what is missing right now is information on menopause. This is for them,
Yeah.
obviously, and it's very educational for them to go through this experience of kind of talking about periods and then learning about something else, and then realizing that the question around menopause is even more of a taboo in Pakistan amongst specific communities and groups of women. So they pivoted and they built a project, an app that raises awareness around menopause, recommends, kind of doesn't diagnose necessarily, but just mention some of the symptoms or some of the experiences that women go through when they go through this stage of their development, and of course recommending specific products for specific things. So it was something that I could see won a lot of hearts and minds amongst the judges globally, and they thought, wow, what a brilliant project, and something that nobody really expected from a group of teenagers. 2 girls, I think one of them was 15, another one 17, and they're still building it. They're really still passionate about it, and it's just something that got inspired in a super sort of unstructured environment that hackathons are. But of course, in other places, it will be taken completely differently. So the same topic around period poverty in other parts of the world is, would have different types of solutions because of the type of experiences on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because a lot of women's health is not even researched. Forget about handling symptoms, prescribing treatments, and things of that sort, right? So even outside women's health, general health, even if, let's say, you have a heart disease, it's not specific to women's uh, physicality and their body condition, right? So typically, a general research is done and it's been prescribed to women, and then it doesn't really work in the long term. So that's
why we need so many more women's voices, because men are developing products that women are using, which is quite unacceptable in this day and age. And of course, unfortunately, we have less than 22% of women in AI, right? Probably less so because of the latest D&I rollbacks and whatnot. But of course, it's really, really encouraging to see young people wanting to tackle problems that they're passionate about or they uncover in their communities. And I think it's at this age that I believe we need to start, because that's when they think freely without any barriers, so to speak. When they're in university, they have other things to worry about, and then they think about jobs. And of course, when they enter the job industry, it's about mortgage and potentially family and whatnot. Whereas when they're young, they can think about problems in a very, very different way to the way adults think. And the kind of solutions they come up with, it just always blows my mind. Some of the initial
very innovative.
Yeah, extremely innovative. I remember actually my co-founder, Chloe, they got inspired in a hackathon to start some of the early research in fertility. And now they have completed a PhD in fertility and AI, one of the only specialists around the world. But that first initial inspiration came from a hackathon in London. Just because we ended up with a few expert specialists coming into the room because they wanted to mentor and see what kids actually can build. And they got them thinking about fertility and the space of AI or fertility within AI, and what issues could be tackled through AI. Nobody knew that this would turn into an almost lifelong project. This person has been studying at Imperial and then UCL and now finished with a PhD, and one of the only experts within fertility and AI, and probably at the age of 20-something already earning a fortune just because they managed to find that very extraordinary niche that nobody even thought about. You see? Just
no one thinks about it. Definitely. Yeah. And you also spoke a little bit about treating this as more a system, not just a technology, right? But then you see education systems, not only in US where I am, UK where you are, but everywhere in the world, they are struggling to keep pace with technological change because it's so rapid. Every day something new is coming up. We don't know what's the pace of education system and how they are going to catch up. What do you think is missing today, and how we teach young people about AI? I mean, how can we supplement the education system, though change may come a little bit later, it's a little bit slower?
Yeah, it's actually a really, really interesting topic. We speak to educators every day. And what you and I define what AI is definitely not how teachers define AI.
Yeah.
And every time I talk to them and I'm like, hey, we've got these amazing programs. We run hackathons. We can teach you how to run a hackathon completely for free. Come and join us in these campaigns. We have these online courses aimed at your students, so you don't have to panic and worry what AI is. We'll take care of this. The way teachers define AI is strictly chatbots and generative AI. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so they always perceive and think of us as, oh, you must be, you will be teaching us how to use Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT. And I'm like, no, not at all. Let's kind of get that definition of AI right. So it's not really just about your chatbots and whatnot, but it's a very very narrow domain, and we kind of have to explain to them that AI is not even, you know, a technology that they think it is, or that it's not just you know, that ChatGPT system or Copilot that they interact with, depending on what kind of school they are. But there is a lot more to AI, and the conversations on ethics and society and where things are going and how children should understand and be aware of, you know, the risks and the dangers, but also, you know, it's about some of the basics and the foundation, like what is image processing, what is signal processing, what is deep learning, what is neural networks, how does maths apply in AI, or the other way around, because I personally think maths is still taught in a very old, outdated way, you know, and when a maths teacher talks about linear algebra, I personally think one of the examples they could be talking about is that the systems you're interacting with every day, everything is powered by maths. That should probably be the first thing I would start my class with. And it's really exciting then, because kids have no idea that that formula they've just been learning about, you know, this is what is the foundation of some of the AI systems that they're interacting with, right? Whether it's on Spotify, Netflix, or somewhere else. So I like it interesting to have these conversations with teachers, because not only are we still teaching in the really old, outdated way, you know, the education system hasn't changed in something like hundreds of years, and we're still teaching this in Victorian style, assuming that kids will just leave school, apply to university, go to have a job, and the job will be actually available and ready for them, right? Which is kind of not the case anymore, because the pace of change is just so fast. And it's just a shame that we're really stuck in that mindset, in this really old ways of thinking and teaching our kids, where I personally think there are so many exciting ways. And I always say, look, if you think AI is a domain of computer science, that's already is a wrong assumption, because but which is a shame, because we're speaking more to computer science teachers because they pick up on our messages and they're interested in AI as a subject. But we always say would like to speak to a history teacher because there are so many applications within history lessons and AI. So, for instance, trying to even kind of describe this. I think somebody did an experiment and put in data sets on US presidents and said, well, the next president is going to be a male and it's going to be a white because.
Yeah, of course.
You know, because, AI learns from patterns, historical patterns. If historical patterns were like that, of course, the next one. But why? Why should it be like that? And we can actually unpack this entire experiment from an ethical lens, to begin with. And of course, there are lots of other conversations we could be having when we intersect AI and geography. Why not create a model that predicts the weather? It's already been done, but it doesn't matter. Why not try to replicate that experiment or predict the next outbreak of fires in California or Portugal, or somewhere else? So there are some really, really interesting intersections that I see between AI as a subject, and other subjects, because I see AI more as an multidisciplinary or intradisciplinary domain. And it's exciting for me to see this as an outsider. But of course, for teachers, it still is a lot of work to try to explain to them that actually it doesn't just apply in computer science, and it should never be a computer science subject, but it applies in philosophy and English and history, geography. And Demis Hassabis got his Nobel Prize not for AI, but for chemistry, right, as well. So there is a lot of really exciting developments happening within AI and healthcare and drug discovery and whatnot. And it's just a shame that all of this knowledge and all of these really exciting case studies, but also terrifying case studies, are not really discussed in education. That's what some of the stuff that we're trying to work on. I know my team is developing a really exciting content right now on sort of intersecting earth sciences and AI to kind of put some really interesting content in front of kids and teachers, so that somebody gets excited and say, wow, there is actually a lot more to AI than meets the eye. And it's definitely not chatbots and how to use ChatGPT, because we have some schools who are, the teachers are really excited about what we have to offer. And yet others tell us we've actually banned all AI systems. We don't allow anyone to use ChatGPT. And we're like, Okay, well, let's first start with the definition and tell you a little bit more about what AI actually is and what it's not. Yeah, and I also find it very sad that a lot of teachers or schools, which are mostly private, they adopt enterprise solutions like Microsoft Copilot, thinking, well, because it's enterprise, because we're paying for it, it means it's safe. Can you imagine, Booba? So nothing is safe. The moment you put anything into
Read
your,
the fine print.
I know, and it's so it made me realize, oh my goodness, it's not only kids that we need to work with and parents, but it's also the teachers themselves that should be aware of how safe or unsafe these systems are and what to do and what not to do. So it's exciting times, but at the same time, I honestly don't see that we're keeping up with the pace of change, yeah, worrying from some in some cases as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more because many teachers are still learning about AI themselves, right? And even in the industry perspective, enterprise or small businesses, startups, you name it. A couple of years back, everywhere I go, there was a lot of generative AI because that was said that's the AI, right? And last few months and this year, it's all about agentic AI. I mean, the definition keeps changing, but the basic principle of AI as a system, how do we educate and empower and provide resources for the next generation who are going to be driving the AI economy, it's really important, right? So
Yeah.
when the next generation is trying to tackle this challenge, how can we equip them today so that they ask the right ethical questions, so that they learn and build ethics first, culture first systems from the start?
I think, again, I'm going to go back to the definition just to make sure we get this right. Because you mentioned it, you started it. So, the definition I really like is the definition that is used by Kate Crawford from the Atlas of AI. So, she refers or she defines AI, and I'll read it out to you just so that I don't get this wrong. It's a mega machine rooted in the extractivism of natural resources, human labor, and data. And of course, when we unpack AI from that context, we realize that AI is definitely not a technology and not a system designed to alleviate anything that's within the the positive realm. I see also AI as more of an extraction mechanism. We extract resources. The raw resources are all of the inputs, all of the data that has been extracted without us giving us permission for them to train their systems on the data that has been extracted. So for me, if we start our conversation and define AI as what it is within the power structure, which is unequal, and the system that it is designed for, it is definitely not to help, it is to benefit from, it is to extract, it is to, who profits from this? It's definitely not the
Yeah,
people who profits from this is the likes of Sam Altman. It's people who are powering those big LLMs, and there is this weird race at the moment who's going to launch that first agent. And really, we should be more worried about how extractive that system is and the impact of it on climate. These are the kind of conversations we should have. Who is designing those systems? Who is at that table? Who are those engineers? They're mostly men, they're mostly white. Who is cleaning that data? There are people in Kenya, Nigeria, Tanzania, who are being paid pennies to look at some of the horrific data, right? So I think if we start our conversation from that context and that angle, then there is a lot of really interesting discussions that we could have to kind of set the foundation and make sure the kids that are going to be developing these technologies in the future or entering the industry, they don't build something that perpetuates that unequal extractive system, and they build something different, and maybe focusing not on the large language model system, but on what Hugging Face has recently been developing, the small systems that are
yeah,
equally, useful, something that we can get kids to experiment more and know that, okay, we can build a website or we can use these ChatGPT LLMs, Anthropic and whatnot, Claude has been a popular one these days. Everyone raves about it, right? But we could
Yeah, a
also,
lot in the news.
yeah, but we could also build something small and local, something that also is able to help us in our day-to-day tasks and whatnot. And also the question, why do we really need building this, is like, I think the fundamental question that I always ask is to answer, like, do we really need to build what you're trying to build? Like, start with a problem, solve for things that really matter. So even on last weekend when we celebrated 8th of March, I know Lovable has released this really cool sort of promo for the one day. It's going to be Lovable is free, you know, build something stupid, something ridiculous. And I'm like, why do you want to build something stupid and something ridiculous when what you need to build is something that solves real problems, something that is useful for the world, right? So, and I think that's where I think education system should be nurturing kids to look at responsibility really seriously, to try and help us tweak the moral compass so that we don't end up kids going and working at companies like Palantir, whose CEO said the technology we build is killing people. We want our kids to be nurtured in a way where that sense of responsibility, that sense of moral compass stays with them so that they make the right choices. When Amazon puts in some weird laws and they don't treat their employees well and correctly, I want the kids who understand, what's happening and what that moral compass is and sense of responsibility. I want them to leave the company and say, I'm done because you're not treating me well. This is not how the leadership should be treating employees. Or when they see Google is trying to sign a contract with ministries of defense or Pentagon, that should be the point where the kids that, at least the kids that I know that come to our hackathons, would be the ones to leave that company and say, sorry, we're done with Google because we disagree. We don't want the system that we have developed and built to be used for war, for extraction, for other purposes. So it's about building and developing, nurturing that sense of responsibility, the moral compass. The ethics is not something we teach through AI only, but it's just the output for the education system should be, how can we ensure that kids remain human, responsible, and do something that's positive for the world? And when it's not positive, they don't have any fear to say no and to leave. So that would be ideal. That's how I would like to see education system structured.
Yeah, exactly. Because AI is not going to be its own vertical or horizontal. It's going to be in every industry, like you said,
Yeah.
right? It's multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. It's not about doing something, building something with AI, but solving a real pain point for people and leveraging AI more responsibly and ethically. And I think we also know very well that teenagers approach this very differently from an adult perspective, obviously for good reasons, because adults had a different perspective, different set of resources at that point in time, right? But
Yeah.
when it comes to, and recently, like you said, we just celebrated the International Women's Day. We are in the Women's History Month in March at this time. When it comes to bias, fairness, accountability, when building AI solutions, in addition to teenagers, especially women and girls, are more underrepresented in AI, and not only in AI, but technology and other fields as well, right? So, what barriers do you see, and how do you think we can help the younger generation, gain resources, knowledge, and awareness so that they can serve underserved communities better, get better AI education?
So I think the first thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to be very controversial, and I know some people will hate me for saying this, but somebody has to say this. So we need to stop DNI rollbacks, full stop. I think what is happening in the US at the moment, the narrative that's coming from the president is not helping us women. It also is not helping other communities who define themselves as diverse. And it's it's tragic, really, some of the progress that we have made, which is very, very minute and small, and we celebrate all
Yeah,
small progress even. It's just tragic to see, and it's sad to see that some of it is already kind of where almost like wasted the last 10 years. That's how I felt when I saw these D&I rollbacks, and when I'm talking to companies who are very much dependent on that narrative because they headquartered in the US. They
Yeah.
would be very blatantly and openly tell me, well, because your campaign actually has the word women and it's Women's International Day Hackathon, we can't sponsor this. And it would typically come from a female as well, because of course we speak to a lot of the departments like CSR, marketing, and a lot of the conversations I do have are with female leaders. And it makes me really sad that a female would say that to a female and actually mention
Very
the fact
sad.
that. So that's the first thing. I think I'm just hoping this all this what I call nonsense really stops. I'm being told that certain corporate companies are just being creative. They haven't stopped doing this, but they are being creative and kind of doing it secretly, which is really weird to hear this as well. And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's not what I'm hearing. I'm coming to talk to corporate companies, and maybe I picked the wrong persona, and I still was talking to companies that are based in the US, and I probably should be talking more to companies based in the UK and Europe. But it made me very sad, how some of these conversations end, where they're very excited, they really want to help, but they genuinely can't, or they have to jump through so many hoops to actually make it happen. And that shouldn't be like that. I think that's really unfair. It's disgusting, really. That's how it should be called, and somebody needs to call it out. So if I'm one of the only people calling it out, then I would do that. So we are very grateful that we are working with the more ethical companies, and I'm really proud of some of the partnerships that we have still created in the last couple of years, and they're still ongoing, and we're just about to sign another contract. So I'm super happy that we're still able to find the companies who care about women and about diversity. And it matters to them, not only because they have children as well, but it matters to them genuinely that we have a more balanced workforce, that we have more women entering the industry, that we have more LGBTQ entering the industry, because it's already been well documented that when the workforce is diverse, it's better for business. You represent all voices. People who are developing technologies are not just developing this for the the small homogeneous group of men, but they're developing it for everyone. It makes sense that everyone's voices are included and listened to. So at the moment, that power structure, that who are the engineers, who are the people who are making decisions, it's very much skewed in the direction of male. And that, I think, is the onus is on the leadership. I really admire male leaders who lead on that as well. And we do have a few who I would very much, love to work with, people who actually care, not because they have daughters again, but because they know it's within the DNA of their company to help, but also it's because they know it's good for business, and it's only fair that women get a chance as well. So I know it's not, I wouldn't say this is like that probably everywhere. I know when I speak to my colleagues and friends in India, they said, "Oh, Elena, you should come to India. We have a lot of female engineers and a lot of technologists." But I'm like, yeah, I would love to learn from you. And I always ask, our leadership in the UK to learn from India, from other Southeast Asian countries where they actually have a lot of women in leadership positions, and also have a lot of female engineers. In the UK, we're not getting this right. And I think I've pointed it out a few times. We have an interesting thing happening in the UK where in the last couple of years, when you take A-levels, you were allowed to drop maths.
Oh, really? Oh, my God.
Can you believe it? I know, right? I've never seen this before, because I'm from Central Asia, from former Soviet Union, and we've never had this amount of choices. Maybe if I did
Unheard of.
that, I never really was the best at maths, and it was always a bit more challenging for me, probably because I never found the application of maths was just not something that was often described as relevant to the world. So I thought, why am I learning something that is really not relevant? I had no idea that maths actually powers so many things, if only. But in the UK, kids are allowed to drop maths in the last couple of years, and a lot of them do, and a lot of the ones that do are girls. That included my own daughter. So when she dropped maths, I thought, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? I was one of those parents who thought, maths, English, just keep the core subjects, please. Just don't drop them. But her college told her, because she didn't get an A in maths at GCSEs, she was not allowed to pick maths at A level. So I was like, wow, that's another interesting thing that's happening in the UK that I personally think shouldn't be happening. So she was only allowed to take geography, philosophy, and English. Those were the 3 subjects she took. And I thought to myself, what's my daughter going to do when she leaves school? I was genuinely worried, Buva. I thought, oh God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And of course, I had no idea that it's not only your A levels that matter in this day and age. And I think this is still relevant and true these days. It's also what else you did beyond your A levels and beyond your school. So if you've been to hackathons, if you've been to conferences, if you've volunteered and done something over and beyond your school, and if you've changed the world before you're 18, then definitely many doors will open. Universities will open doors too, because they want a student like this who's already proven, created some projects using AI and whatnot. Companies will want you because they can see you have been learning how to solve problems from an early age. It doesn't matter whether you're using VR, AI, augmented reality, whatever else. It does not matter. What matters is that ability to solve problems, right? And if the school is not teaching you, because the school is teaching you how to pass an exam, that's a different topic, and let's not discuss that. Then what is
take another
yeah, where can we learn those skills? To me, like hackathons, boot camps, doing some extracurricular activities, volunteering, these are really, really great ways to build your problem-solving skills, your critical thinking. You're learning on the job. You're learning how to learn, probably unlearn everything you've learned in the school, right? Because a lot of the stuff is still outdated and exam-based, and learn something that's really, really relevant. I think these are the really big skills and topics. And at the same time, of course, it's the soft skills, working together in a team that you've never met before, like my daughter at the age of 12, just entering a team that she hasn't met a single person, and yet she managed to create the kind of rapport that made the team work together, right? And that was her secret sauce. She used to win hackathons, and I had to ban her eventually. I said, Victoria, you're not coming to a hackathon again as a participant. You can come and help me. I'm not going to put you into any team, because every time I put you into a team, you win. And then it makes me look like it's a rigged system. My daughter keeps winning with hackathons. And I said, you can't come anymore. That's it. You can just coach others how to win. And that's what Victoria started doing. But the reason why she was winning was not because she was a technical person. She was just a great communicator. She just knew the game of winning, and she got people in the team to do what needed to be done in a really structured, like project management, I think, was always her forte. And that's the reason why she won so many of these. But of course, that adds to the experience. So right now, I know she's also won many awards, and she's a really sought after employee at IBM, and also a woman in AI and a woman in defense. So, but her journey started when she was 12, 13, just being in an environment, being out of her comfort zone, but doing something very different and quite extraordinary, solving big problems like floods and fires and whatnot, using systems like AI or VR or augmented reality, whatever. So it's really what you do outside of school that also really matters, and what kind of other skills. Like schools don't teach financial literacy. It's a must, right?
It's a must.
Sorry,
I couldn't
what?
agree more.
Yeah, and so many things that we as an industry think the schools should be picking up on, and they're not. Which is why when we talk to schools, I always say, I will never ever teach you something the industry does not need. So the courses we have or the programs we develop, they're not developed by teachers, and it's not because I don't like working with teachers. I love working with teachers, but I feel there is an added value when you bring industry into the room, the industry that will be hiring that young person or, from that talent pool. So we always say we will have the industry shaping the content that we have, so that the kids that you have in school, they're learning something that will really add value to them when they start searching for those jobs and those careers. And whether you like it or not, and it's unfortunate for me, unfortunately, and probably for you as well as an AI ethicist, we don't see many jobs that will not be impacted by AI. Am I right? I mean, every single industry.
Exactly. Mhm.
Yeah, getting impacted, and it will, well, unless of course you're doing plumbing or roof work or something else, something that's where your hands are still required. But like I said to somebody else the other day, just wait another couple of years and Tesla robots or other type of robots are also going to be all over, the offices and streets and whatnot, because unfortunately this guy called Elon Musk is really, really doing his best at the moment to develop those robots and get them into the offices. And they will be very cheap, cheaper than paying national insurance, cheaper than paying into somebody's pension. You just pay 20K for a robot, and it probably doesn't take much time to maintain, and they will be working 24/7. There will be certain jobs that will be automated, others that will be disrupted in other ways. But unfortunately, that kind of technology is not going to disappear. Although at the moment I'm thinking, well, if the war carries on in the Middle East and if it reaches other data centers apart from AWS, maybe things will happen in a slightly different way. But at the moment, it's highly unlikely, right, Buva? I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially the thing that you mentioned about corporations getting creative and the energy issue we have because of AI. All this drive sustainable needs, right? So it's not climate as a separate issue. It's not about AI as a separate issue. It's not about having math, physics, or chemistry in house, but trying to build those life skills that are really needed to drive the economy. And like you mentioned, in climate also, there are these terms where we hear green washing, green hushing. So green hushing is where a company really works on sustainable initiatives, but externally doesn't really share that because obviously they are under certain guardrails by the overall legal system and the federal system, right? So
yeah,
teaching our kids more life skills to solve real problems is important.
yeah,
But a very valuable point that you mentioned also. So it's not about math, AI, computer, physics, or chemistry, or even geography as a skill, but the human capabilities, the soft skills, right? Problem solving, communication, and also ensuring that you're able to work as a team, collaborate in a team, contribute to the society and the community. So those are like real skills that we need in humans, teens, women, underserved communities, everyone in the world. And I believe that also is contributing to some of this conflict in the Middle East. We'll have to see where it goes. So, with all this going on, we often think of AI more like a double edged sword, right? There are good and bad things, there are opportunities and risks.
yeah.
So, for the next generation and the young people who are trying to get into AI and be responsible, what is one piece of advice you have considering there are opportunities and risks?
Mm. Oh, that's a really difficult one. I can't give one piece of advice. You have heard me speak already for an hour almost. I guess I think it's that skill, and I'm not sure what it's called yet, but it's where you can very quickly learn and adapt. Maybe it's resilience and adaptability.
Mm,
Unlearn something that's no longer needed. And unfortunately, a lot of the skills that kids learn in school or subjects will probably not be needed. And learn something super fast, something that's actually relevant. Pick up on a new skill. Find the time. So it's learning to learn, I think some people call it. So for me, this is just really, understanding where the needs are. Again, I do see the risk benefit in just maybe looking for problems that haven't been solved yet.
yeah,
Whether I wouldn't say every problem out there can be solved through technology. I think it's important to understand what problems exist and how can we solve them. But at the same time remaining that element of being human and empathetic and really caring for the world, for the people we work with, because I think if we don't, then what happens, what kind of world are we living for the next generation? But again, teaching with that sense of responsibility, I think it's really important. That moral compass, how can we actually teach that? It's more, I think that's something that keeps me awake at night. How do we make sure that we nurture not the next generation of Sam Altmans or Mark Zuckerberg, but we nurture the next generation of somebody else who's actually a lot more responsible. And I'm just trying to think of a name of a role model who I really admire and aspire to be like, the likes of Kate Crawford, the likes of Timnit Gebru, people who actually care and think of problems from the ethics lens and can actually unpack and see the underneath of what these big tech companies are doing. Is it really benefiting? Who is it benefiting? Who is in control? Who are those powerful capitalists and organizations who are benefiting from the system, and who is not, who is left behind? How can we level the playing field? How can we make sure the world we're building does not end because of the efforts of those few men out there? So it's kind of, there is so much at play. I think it would be great for young people to just keep up, but it's so hard for us adults to keep up, right? Every day there is something strange happening. Today, I think I saw Volkswagen has laid off 50,000 people, and I'm like, that's really sad. I think Dorsey last week or week before also laid off 4,000 people. And again, I'm kind of seeing a lot of really strange trends, struggling to keep up. So it's very hard for young people to understand where to be right now, what to learn and what to study. I told a parent the other day, if somebody tells you, I know exactly what will be in 5 years and I know exactly the kind of your child should be learning, they are lying, because we don't know. There will be jobs that haven't been invented.
We don't know next week.
Yeah, we don't really know where we will be. Yes, who the president will be in the United States. Yeah, so I don't know. It can all go very politically. But what I can see is that technology and politics are intertwined, and economics, of course, as well. So it's very interesting to see the trends and keep an eye on what's really happening. The advice I would give is just read the news and just be aware of what's happening and just pick up on the trends. But in terms of learning skills at school, I would have no clue what to advise and recommend. I still think computational skills and computing are probably the right things to learn, just because it feels, if you don't understand how this works fundamentally, you will probably struggle to tweak it and build something that is actually useful, if that is your journey and you are aiming to improve the world in one way or another. But other than that, it's super hard. Career advisors these days are probably scratching their heads wondering what to advise, and I can't blame them.
I mean, like I said, read the news from trusted sources. Politics, economy, technology, people's lives, they are also intertwined, right? So what we should ideally do, like you mentioned, resilience, adaptability are really human skills. Only we have that. Try to develop that, learn to solve a real problem. Those are, I think, my takeaways. Is there anything else you have as we wrap up for the day?
Well, I mean, we've got some very exciting things happening at Teens and AI. Definitely keep an eye on our socials. I know if I didn't say that, our head of marketing would be very unhappy with that. So I'm saying this to please our head of marketing, Bev. But of course, we've got some very exciting programs launching in the summer, where we're going to be talking about climate from all different angles, from how we can improve climate, using technology, but also what are the risks of technology and the impact of AI systems on climate. So if those are topics that are interesting for you or your children, come and join us. And of course, we've just released a prompt engineering course focusing on careers. It's probably the only course that talks about large language model systems and tells you how they actually work, so that you're in the know of what it is that you're interacting with, and knowing also that the systems don't keep your secrets is, I think, one of the other courses we've just released. So keep an eye. We're releasing some interesting courses. We're even working on some interesting courses on robotics, on even financial literacy in the age of AI. So we are as I said, we always say that we will never teach you something the industry or the world does not need. But the program in the summer, it's very much on the in the vein of social entrepreneurship. So if you want to change the world, come and join us. So that's all I will say.
Thanks, Elena. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking time. And thanks, everyone, for spending your time with us today. I appreciate all the thoughtful perspectives shared by you, Elena. And everyone, if you'd like to continue the discussion, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to engage offline. Feel free to connect with Elena, follow Teens in AI, definitely check out the courses. We are happy to respond to questions. If you have any suggestions on topics or voices you'd like to see featured, do drop us a note. So I host these Women in AI conversations once a month, bringing together global experts like Elena on ethical AI culture, policy, and leadership. We want to cover almost every region in the world, so please keep an eye out for the next topic and guest. And do sign up when registrations open up. And thank you again for joining us, and thanks for being part of this global dialogue. Thank you so much, Elena, for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.